Oh, the cat got stuck. Oh my god. Louie, why were you in there? Oh my god. My son got locked in the laundry room. So, the Poughkeepsie tapes. Let's talk about it. The Poughkeepsie tapes are a mockumentary that take place in Poughkeepsie, New York, or, as they're formerly known, Snooki from Jersey Shore's hometown.
You think you are, Snooki, but I don't know why you would even say things like that. Even though I don't like you, well, I will always love Ronnie. He doesn't even fucking like you.
You need to relax, because you're a fucking loser from Poughkeepsie, and you know it. And you know
Set around this girl named Cheryl Dempsey, and what happens to her in these tapes are a little graphic. A little is an understatement. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a trigger warning right here. If you are uncomfortable with talking about those topics, I completely get it. If anything, it should make anybody uncomfortable. But please do me a favor, don't report this video. Go ahead and click off of it. I give you permission even to do that. That's fine. Because Big Daddy YouTube does not like that, and I don't want to deal with that. I can't be by myself here when I say that the Poughkeepsie tapes are almost perfect. And for those of you that think, I should be by myself in a, padded room with a straitjacket on, I kind of agree too, but cinematically, it is a beautiful example, beautiful, take that with a grain of salt, of what found footage and analog horror is. Why I say this is one of the best found footage slash entry to analog horror movies I've ever seen is because when you watch found footage, and this was my issue with it for a long time, it doesn't really make sense to be filming everything. It, like, if I'm sitting there, flojoing my way out the fucking room away from the killer clowns that were in the locked room before and somehow got unlocked, why would I film all that? And the way everything is cut in between, it it does a great job at doing what it does. It's all from the killer's point of view, and each tape and each cut-in of the FBI profilers, the forensic specialists, with the news reporters, the parents and loved ones and whatnot being interviewed, the landlord that found them, the tapes in the house being interviewed, it cuts it in between that. And it does, why I say it's like analog horror, other than the fact that it's a VHS tape, is that you kind of have to pay attention the way you do with regular analog horror, except it's not in a series of videos, it's in a series of tapes. It kind of drops you into this situation where you have to look and figure it out for yourself. So I think many of us are familiar with found footage. You have Creep, VHS, Hell House, the god-awful Blair Witch Project. Sorry if you like that movie. I don't. I just, it makes me angry. It grosses me out. Maybe I need to give it another watch, and maybe my opinion will change. Everything's subject to change around here, Subject to change. What the hell? Can I speak? But, and, because, sorry, I have to go on a quick tangent here. They talk about, oh, it's so great, and it was the first of its time. It was not. There were definitely two, other movies, Faces of Death, and one that I'm not going to say here because you can go look for yourself. It's an Italian film about, some reporters that have to do some horrific things, and horrific things happen to them. The title has to deal with people snacking on people, and um, a, a World War II term for big fire. So take all those, you put them together, you'll get two words, and you'll see from there. And with analog horror, if you've seen any of the Walton Files, the Mandela Catalog, or Greylock, then you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. And this movie blends these two concepts together astronomically well. So how it starts off is footage of a funeral. You see these like VHS tapes of this like younger girl. She's smiling, doing like ballet poses and whatnot. And then you get a cut of, like, the funeral, and then you get something from the killer's point of view. Oh my gosh, two pins down, hands down, but of a little grave plot. And then somebody is taking, what are them things called? A rope? I don't know. Whatever you use, they're not ropes. They're something else. The thing that you hook to trucks and you get the other truck and pull it out the ditch. I've had to do it multiple times. I wasn't the truck puller, I was being pulled because I can't drive. But it's attached to the grave, and then bro was really pounding on the gas. He's going. And you see a, presumably a female body being pulled out of there. And they must have really stuck her in the ground because it took him a long time to get her out of the ground, like embarrassingly long. I've seen cars get pulled out of ditches with less effort than that. Anyway, I digress. So it's broken down into 7 parts, and we're going to start with number 1 because that's how chronological order works. So, part 1 is the tapes. It shows the landlord where she's like, "This is where I found the tapes," and then it goes to FBI film analyst that has to watch all of these tapes. And it is a huge room that he has them in, and he is obviously very disturbed. And he talks about how his wife, he brought some of his work home with him, and how she had accidentally watched like 30 minutes of one of the tapes. And he's like, it was about a good year before she would let me touch her again. So if that doesn't set the tone for the trigger warning at the beginning, I don't know what does. I don't know what to tell you. In this big room that they're in, he goes, 2,400 hours of footage. And he says it was from here, a big ass room, to here, and how most of them were of Cheryl Dempsey. And quick side note right here. First of all, what was this man's job? The film was made in 2007. Before the market crash. So maybe he was just lucky. Had a decent paying job prior. Maybe he built up enough, money to get this house going. But he had to buy this camera. He had to buy all of these videotapes. Okay, I understand families used to film parties and shit like that with them, but you have a lot. Where's the money coming from? Where's the job? Who's paying for it? And also, this man had a lot of time on his hands to be plotting, to be kidnapping, to be filming, to be doing other things in the films. He had a lot of time on his hands, and I need someone to tell me, how did this man do this? Also, when he is first starts filming, he has this weird balloon fetish, and it's Lord, I shouldn't be laughing. This is terrible. But and you know what? We ain't kink shaming over here, okay? But he'll like get a woman to blow up a balloon, and then she's like, okay, and then she's bouncing on the balloon, and then he says, pop it, and she's like, what? And then he screams, and it made me shudder. I was like, oh my god, like, he's like, pop it, and they're over 100 hours alone of just balloon stuff. So my man's was figuring something out about himself, and oh my gosh. Part 2, First Blood. I'm falling down, Lord help me. It opens up with an FBI profiler teaching, or former FBI profiler teaching a class on, you know, the tapes and the disturbing things that you might endure when doing this line of work. And he says to them, he says, if there's one thing I know from doing this job for a long time, is that 3 of you will go home tonight and decide this is not what you want to do. Is that there are terrible people who do terrible things in this world. And the question you need to ask yourself is this what I want to surround myself with for the rest of my professional life? And then he goes on and says, and if you don't, it's okay. So then we cut over to one of the tapes, and he is see there's a little girl in the yard playing with her dolls, and he goes, "I like your dolls." And then she says, "Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." And then he was like, "Well, did mommy teach you nothing about manners either?" Yikes, yikes. Why would he say that? And he says, like, "Is there anything you want to say to the camera?" And she says, "Like what?" She incredible child actor. She had an attitude and was scared. It was for what it is. It was very good. But he says, "Why don't you tell the camera that I'm a happy, pretty little girl?" Yikes! So that's a bit much. But it proves right there that he likes to have control, and that's a big theme in the rest of the film. He likes people that are vulnerable. You see the camera turning to a different angle. He was like, "Would you like to take a look inside the camera?" Like looking through the lens. And then you see a boom, and then him dragging a body, putting it in his car, and then driving away. The lens is angled to where you see his keys in the ignition. Then it goes to an interview with the parents afterwards. And you can just tell, like, they are distraught over this. And then goes back to the class with the FBI profiler. And he says, once again, trigger warning, R word of a 6-year-old. He says, "You see that? This is nothing." He doesn't even know what he's doing yet. As in, like, he's still trying to figure out what's getting him going. Apparently, it was balloons for some reason, and now it's, you know, bad things, but worse things, honestly. But control is going to be a big theme. He likes to have this dominance over women. Part three, getting better. It opens up with another tape of him getting into a couple's car and asking them, "Hey, do you mind if you drop me off to the gas station? It's just out of this exit, like on the corner." And they're like, "Sure." And he's filming still, and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I continue to film? It's for my trip." And they're like, "Oh, yeah." And then she coincidentally goes over to her husband and she said, "Honey, we're going to be movie stars." Yeah, you are. Oh my God. Also, another trigger warning. If you do not like car crashes, I mean, who does? Except for that movie, Crash. You really can make a movie about anything. But if you don't like car crashes or looking at them, I personally don't. I had to close my eyes for it. Just keep that in mind when I'm telling the tale of these tapes. So they're driving, and you see him once again hit somebody with the camera, hits the man with the camera. The man is driving. They crash, and it's boom, 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 boom. It's not a fun scene. I had to close my eyes. Honestly, nothing in this movie is a fun scene. If it's fun to you, get some fucking help. And then it switches to another angle of him holding the camera in front of her and then take it with one hand and then taking like chloroform with the next, or it's suggested that it's chloroform. They don't actually know. And, putting it over her mouth. And the FBI, like, video analyst that had to watch all these tapes, he was like, you can tell this is something he's done before, that he's mastered. He had to hold it with one hand and then place the rag over her mouth with the other. So it proves right there that he is finding a formula for how he's going to do all this. And it's not just him trying shit out anymore. It's like he knew where to crash, he knew to kill the husband, he left the woman vulnerable. He knew to find a very nice couple that was going to let him go to the gas. This why don't be picking up nobody. Don't do it. But he specifically picked this gas station on this exit that he knew had been abandoned for years. So even if they got to the gas station, it they would have been like, "Oh, something's up. Something is afoot, and it's gonna be mine severed if I keep freaking going." These are more for his enjoyment now. He's figured out he's good at something and there's no more impulsiveness to it. It is step by step by step by step. And in the midst of that, there's news reports of a car crashing, but nobody's there. And they're like, okay, where the hell did these people go? It switches over to one of his tapes, and it's slowly going down the woman's body, and just down about right here, but it's really quick. You have to like look at it. There's a news report of a woman's body being found with the man's head in her body. And then it's the forensics analyst saying, "Oh, yeah, that body that you found, killer had hacked off the man's head and then surgically put it in the woman's abdomen." Who the fuck does that? Fucking weirdo. That's who. Someone once again going back with too much time on their hands. If this man was working a good old job, where's he getting all this money from? Where's he getting all this time? So it's showing that he is getting very expertly good at killing people, and he doesn't do the same method each time of hacking people's heads off. He does it with different things that would be less efficient than, like, if we're taking a power saw and then a regular saw one day, maybe we throw a good old axe in there. So the forensic specialist is telling us that tale. He plant the body somewhere else. The body is not important. It is the tapes that are the trophies for him. He doesn't care about it. You'll see some things where they keep a piece of the person. Nope, not him. He said, "Bitch, I'm different." Okay, pull up to the scene with my ceiling missing. I am different. Where did you get a battery from, son? Where'd you get a battery from? No, you cannot have that. Incubus, come here. Oh, it's Louie. Incubus is over here being an angel. Part 4. Cheryl Dempsey. Finally, we got to our girl. Well, actually, he got to her first, but, who are we? It cuts to the killer. There's going to be a lot of that. It cuts to. Not like I'm saying kudzu, but it cuts to the killer in this random girl's room. Assuming it's Cheryl Dempsey's room. And if you made that assumption, you would be correct. It starts with him in Cheryl Dempsey's room. And he is just in there filming her bed and all this other stuff. And then he hears her coming up the stairs. So he puts the camera down where you can kind of see everything, but you see him walking in her closet. And then she is about to go in the shower, and you see him peering out of her closet. He has this plague doctor's mask on. And oh my gosh, it doesn't get weirder than that. She gets in the shower, and then you see him picking up the camera and then filming the shower curtain with it. And then she's like, "Is that you? Stop. Da 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 da. Quit." He once again puts the camera down and he hides in her closet. And you hear her boyfriend say, "Hey, do you want ice cream?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then it's them drinking beer and eating ice cream. I know we're talking about how sick this killer is, but who the fuck is doing that? Who is drinking beer and eating ice cream? Maybe I'm not tapped in to the float community, okay? But I hate that. I hate that so much. That was so fucking disgusting. And she's like, "Why'd you move my stuff, Tim?" His name is Tim, BT dubs. "Why'd you move my stuff, Tim?" And he's like, "I didn't." She was like, "Yeah, you did. I had clothes right there." And I know Mr. Witch Doctor Man or Plague Doctor Man is in the closet just muffly giggling it up. He says like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" She was like, "Well, I rented a couple movies. We can go watch them." And it's like, okay, they're renting a couple movies. They're going to watch them. And it cuts to him, going down the stairs and peering over the couch and Tim and Cheryl spooning. So Tim and Cheryl are asleep, and he goes into the kitchen and starts cutting shit on and all that. Kills Tim, and chases Cheryl. Like, he beats the hell out of Tim, and it does a really cool shot where you just see, like, this movie's very suggestive. You just see him wailing but it's a shadow, wailing on that motherfucker. I mean, really throwing his arm out, really just giving him the good old 1-2. And then it's Cheryl screaming, and then he kidnaps her. So there's more news reports on the couple's demise. Tim was found dead, but Cheryl was nowhere to be seen. Where's Cheryl? Where did she go? We know where she went, okay? And her friend is being interviewed by a journalist, and she's like, she would always tell me that, I don't know why, but I really feel like somebody's always watching me. And this is where it gets, if it was not graphic before, this is where it gets very graphic. It goes to another tape of Cheryl being hogtied and yelled at, and it just, he's beating the shit out of her too. It's very, I told you there was going to be some not good stuff in this. So if you made it this far, congratulations. We're getting even worse. He's like, "What's your name?" And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "What's your name?" And she was like, "Cheryl." And he's like, "No, it's Slave." So you can see kind of where we're going with the movie. And I'm not going to give too much away with that, even though I've given the whole movie away. One thing he does to kind of keep the cops off of his tail, he puts Tim's family jewels in her sock drawer, and he crafted a murder scene to mislead detectives. They interview some theater guy. You can, when I say some theater guy, that you really, that's all you need, because you can tell that man is in the theater. They try to give some insight on like what the plague doctor mask is, and he says the word "dottore pesti." I don't speak Italian, but it's basically the bringer of plague. If you want to correct me, or I can correct myself in the editing process, it'll be fine. But he does it. He wears this mask to either hide his face, so he won't be seen in these tapes, and or it kind of puts him away from the killings a little bit. He does like an intimate setting, he does like all that, but it's like it's not him, it's this character that's doing it. It's an alter ego of his. Theatrically, I love that, but in real life, hate that. It cuts to Cheryl being chained up, and she says something about her parents. He was like, you don't have parents. And she's like, why? He's like, because I unalived them, which he is totally BSing about, but it's that psychological torture that, is really becoming a big thing for him. And there is something, I mean, there is, but our wording is not about, you know, consensual relations between two adults. It's obviously not. It's a power thing. He wants to break her down. He is saying all sorts of fucked up things to her. And then he waterboards her, basically. It's not the waterboard, but, you know, in the sink, if you catch my drift. And then makes her say, like, I'm happy you killed my parents, and keeps making her refer to herself as slave. So, like I said, it is a psychologically fucked up movie, but it is very well put together. So the news has the parents on, they're doing the "please bring my daughter back." It shows a video of her mother, Cheryl's mother, and he's walking up the steps. He says, "If I can help you, then let me." And she starts to look at him, and she's like, "Wait a minute." She notices he has a camera, and he laughs. And then she's just kind of like, but, figuring it out that this is definitely, she's like, "I don't know how, but I know this is the person that took my daughter." She says, like, she was just in shock, and she knew there was nothing she could do, so she didn't do anything. Go back to Cheryl with the old ball and chain. Yeah, if you watch the movie, you, you'll get it. And then he pulls out this creepy ass, like, doll esque mask and puts it on her. That's basically the end of part 4. Part 5, a new MO. The police and the press are calling him the Water Street Butcher. And that is terrifying for me, because I used to live near a place called Water Street. So and it wasn't a very long street. So who's butching over there? Better not be anybody I know. So police are going around and warning prostitutes to stay off the street. You know it's bad when the police are like, hey, please, for your own safety, stop hooking, okay? Don't do it right now. Please, for the love of God. And it shows different women, presumably prostitutes, that are out in various places where he's dumping the bodies, and they have this giant like cut right there for some reason. I don't know, this Joker ass like cut. It's why not both sides? I don't know, but that's just the way he does it. And Cheryl's back here, chained up. An old girl is down there. He kidnapped a prostitute. Old girl is down there, and she is screaming her head off, and she's doing her best to escape. And Shirley's like, "Hey, yo, don't do that. Do not do that. Please, for the love of God, do not do that." Here she goes, not taking no advice, going and trying to escape. And he comes down here, Mister Plague Doctor himself comes down there, and he's like, "Oh, you want to fucking escape, bitch?" It's not what he said, but it's practically what he's saying. And then he ties her up. He was like, "You let her out," and she's like, "No, I didn't. I swear to God, I did not do that." And he said, "This is your punishment." And then he makes Cheryl kill old girl. See what I did there? And that is really peak 2007 graphics, everybody. It's not that I wanted more gore, Jesus, but it's not the best. It's not the best one I've seen. You know, if you know, you know. And this is where the unalive Philia comes in. You know, as you can imagine, the prostitute that he got is no longer with us and no longer a consenting adult. Infer from there. And then it's basically these Girl Scouts show up at his door, and I'm like, oh man, fuck, no, don't fucking do that. But they're hearing a noise the whole time. Shirley's screaming, and it really does save these little girls' lives. So he's like, why don't you guys come in? And here's the thing, why would you do that? Well, this is a little bit of a tangent. I had went to I don't know, some church youth group shit one time, and we took a lot of or we were getting canned goods from these rich people's houses. And this one lady was like, "Why don't you come in? And I gotta go get them. Why don't you come in for a second?" And I was sitting there. These other kids are like, "Oh, okay, I'll fucking do it." I was sitting there. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna die in this bitch. They are gonna put us in the attic." And we did something prior to that called a 30-hour famine. I don't think they know what famine means, and how disrespectful. And then we had a big Super Bowl party. The year that Christina Aguilera fucked up the national anthem, it was that year. And I was like, bro, I ain't got nothing in my stomach. I I'm gonna die in this rich lady's house with nothing in my stomach anyway. But so that's kind of what I thought. To add to the point, they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" He's like, "I'm a police officer." And they're like, "Oh, okay, cool." And he's like, "Would you girls like anything? Would you like some Coke?" He pours, Coke in a cup and hands it to him. I'm assuming they couldn't hold actual cans of Coke for legal reasons. Coke ain't gonna want to be a part of that. They ain't getting sued either. Come on now. And I'm thinking one girl's not gonna drink the Coke, but they both end up doing it. I'm like, okay, well, we're just being idiots now. Stranger danger. Nobody said anything. Nobody taught you that. So they were like, "What's that noise?" It's Cheryl screaming. And he's like, "Oh, that's just a raccoon down in the basement. He's very friendly. Would you like to go see it?" And they're like, um, "We have to be somewhere." And then he lets them go. And then it shows a table in the foreground the whole time with a cloth over it. Guess who's in the table? Cheryl, with that creepy ass doll mask on. Can you imagine that? It turns out DNA of a fellow police officer matched some of the scenes of the crime, or a scene of the crime. And it was Officer Jim Foley. and they interview his son, and he's like, I can't believe it, but he's obviously very distraught about the whole thing going on. And he's like, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. Jim's found guilty for the crime. They sentence him to death, which this movie, I'm like, people are on death row for years. My man's Jim died pretty fucking quick. And they execute him, and his son is like very, he's upset about it. Obviously, he's like, that was my dad, but if he did what he did, there's nothing I can do about it. He deserves to be in jail, be in prison. Then they execute him. Part 6, missed one. So somebody gets a map in their mailbox that says missed one, and the filming is still going on. If they executed Jim Foley, right, the alleged Water Street butcher, uh, then who the fuck is filming now? Who is it? Big mystery. Many people try to blame it on the fertility clinic. He sent some samples out, and then shit must have got somewhere. I don't know. I don't know how they did that, but he was found innocent on September 9th, 2001. And I know what you're thinking. Exactly. 9/11. So instead of that being big news in the Poughkeepsie, newspaper, journal, whatever, 9/11 obviously took importance. And he was pushed to a small, cute little section on the second page. And as you can imagine, his son took issue with that, and many other people did as well. So it shows a video of him fake being a cop once again, and it shows the back of the cop car. You know how there's static behind me? Yeah, you know how cops have the little cage? This bitch got back there. First of all, I would not have gotten in the car. I would have ran the fuck away. Stranger danger. It's a big theme of people not understanding stranger danger in this movie. It No. Bitch, don't talk to me. But second of all, bitch, let's say I disregard stranger danger. I would have gotten the front. If he is faking being a cop and he has no other accomplice, uh, you can get in the front of the cop car. I'm pretty sure any regular cop, if you're like, no, I need to go home, I need someone to take me home, you're the only one I trust, they won't put you in the back where you can't. First of all, it's not comfortable back there. And if it was, there's a big ass problem. They got hella them. Them seats are not comfortable. They're made to be easily cleaned. Okay, so if she gets back there and it's just a good old cloth seat, that's a big ass problem. You know what I'm saying? Miss Lady gets in the back of the cop car and she's like, "Hey, can you drop me off at the gas station?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I can drop you off at the gas station." And she says, thank you, officer." And he's like, "Why did you just call me officer?" And then he reveals that he's not a cop. He says he's a butcher. And he said, "I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna R word and not kill you." And this bitch says, "Okay." I mean, what else? What else she gonna say? What is she going to say? It's a very compromising position. And then he starts laughing, and he's like, "No, you're not. You're just gonna allow that, What choice does she have? Fake officer, fake deputy. What choice does she have?" So it's very clear he likes dead things. He likes being in control. Weirdy. So it has this shot of her sitting in the foreground, and then this god awful creepy thing comes in the background. When I tell you it is basically swimming on the concrete. My man's is double masked up on a Thursday afternoon. He's got the the plague doctor mask right here on his face, but like right here, he has this creepy ass fucking mask, similar in looks to the one that Cheryl Dempsey had on her face. There are very mixed reviews of profiles of him, what he looked like, where he lived, was he alive, was he not alive? Oh, he lived over here. No, he didn't. He actually lived over here. So it's a very confusing thing. It's just people wanting to be like, oh, hey, Hey, I know where he's at. Like, Part 7 found. So the house gets swatted. Do you remember that map that was in the mailbox? Yeah, guess what? Boys, we got him. We got him. We did it. And not really, actually, because, the filming is still going on. But here comes the SWAT team. Fun. The Water Street Butcher's house gets swatted. For those of you that are gamers, you ought to be familiar with that concept because you do that to each other's houses. And then the police find nothing. They're pissed, using our taxpayer dollars because you got mad that somebody was better than you in a game. Please. Have you thought about not doing that? Have you thought about just taking the L? Is this an L your way? So bro's not there. Big shock. And surprise, Cheryl is alive. Oh my god. Everybody clap. A bit of a problem with that is she was found in a box uh with the mask on in her little doll baby dress. She's showing various signs of torture and malnourishment and all the bells and whistles that go along with kidnapping and torturing and other work. Her parents, her friends are happy to have uh, Shirley Gurley home. There's an interview with her, and they're like, "Well, tell us about your experience." And she was like, what do you mean? What happened?" She's like, has tears in her eyes and all of that. And they're like, about the horrific things you went through, and she was like, he loves me. And I'm like, oh man, Stockholm, come get your syndrome. And I'm like, oh fuck, bitch. And then she says he's gonna come back and take me away. And she moves like her hair, she scratches her head, she reveals she has no hand. No hand. She got one hand, don't have the other one. And I was like, oh fuck. Like that was the sign of torture, I suppose, and amputation. So they're like, okay, we can stop doing the interview. You're fine. Then the black screen comes up with words, and it's like 2 weeks after this interview took place. Cheryl, let's just say her and little Susie Vert went to Rolling Loud together. You know what I'm saying? And she left a note, and it declares her undying love for her master. And I was like, poor Cheryl. Oh, girl. Oh, my God. And then later, her grave has been robbed again. And it goes back to the FBI video analyst. He says, out of all the tapes that they had, that long ass room of tapes, 27 of them are missing. And he's like, I don't even want to know what is on these tapes. If it's as bad as it has to be worse than what I saw. So what have we learned? Stranger danger is a very important concept, but artistically, I think that this is probably one of my favorite horror films I've seen. It can be fun, the ghosts and ghouls and all that. That can be fun if it's done well, and sometimes if it's just a shitty movie, that can be also very fun. But as far as something that really scares me, really just gets my goat, this takes the fucking cake. Stuff like that terrifies me, but it's very interesting, and I think that there was a lot of thought put into it. It kind of reminds me, like I said before, it's definitely giving like the attention to detail is given like Greylock vibes, and I love that. And they really cared about this movie. Also, if you were wondering, like, I wonder what this actress is doing. Is she okay? Was this traumatizing for her? Because I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I don't know if I'd enjoy. I don't know how well I would do after being filmed in something like that. Um, she was one of the executive producers on it. Cheryl is fine. Miss Dempsey is doing her damn thing. Well, I hope you enjoyed the torturous explanation of the Poughkeepsie tapes. Bye.